Let's take you to the very latest in the world of business. The JSE was down on Thursday morning, tracking weaker European peers after the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, acknowledged that steep interest rate hikes could tip the U.S. economy into recession. Neo Kgantsi, a portfolio manager at Absa, joins us now for a look at how the markets are faring today. Neo, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. The rand still seems to be struggling to firm below the 16 rand against the dollar mark. Talk us through some of the factors influencing trade there.
Well, I think that, the rand has been a serial underperformer, especially if you compare it against major currencies, the euro, the pound sterling, as well as the dollar, and there has been, some moments where basically it has seriously undershot, those currencies. If we just follow the most recent history, you'll remember that there was a huge sell-off of the rand in 2001, during the emerging market crisis. And then as the world was recovering from the credit crisis in 2008, 2009, we remember that there were, big economies basically started quantitative easing. So basically this means that, there was huge appetite, for hard currency assets. And that meant, a huge sell-off, for the rand. And then we also remember not so long ago in 2015, just after, Minister of Finance Nene was fired from the cabinet, the rand basically blew up. And very recently, we saw geopolitical tensions, in Eastern Europe, between Ukraine and the US, and there's also some actors, in place like the US, NATO countries, and so on. So the rand basically at that point, I think it approached around 18 rands against the dollar, but it has since came back to around 16. All in all, since 1995, the rand has been depreciating against the US dollar by about 6% per annum. This basically reflects differences in inflation rates, interest rates, as well as productivity levels.
British International Investment plans a $200 million investment in Africa hydropower. What are the specs for that deal looking like?
Well, I think that they will be investing that money in some of their underserviced countries, in Africa, because remember that basically some countries in Africa, Africa as a whole basically has got, 40%, exposure to power. And that obviously has got implications towards, economic growth, productivity, development, and so on. So I think that the countries that are targeted for that basically is the likes of Burundi, Rwanda, some parts of Democratic Republic of Congo, and so on. And those countries are very rich in minerals. There's huge potential, in those countries. And the sad thing is that, you've got young population that should be put to use, in order to promote the growth of the country. But because of lack of development and opportunities, we've seen most of them going into diaspora in other countries, to look for better opportunities. Yeah. So I think that this investment is very much welcome. It's clean energy, which bodes very well, with the emphasis that we have seen, in economic cycles very recently. And these countries basically will be using the kinetic force of water in order to generate electricity. That would be most welcome, because some, children in countries like Rwanda, they've never even seen a light bulb, their entire life.
Yeah. BMW, South Africa, has added 16 African countries to its existing portfolio of 30 export countries, including Senegal, Nigeria, Angola, Kenya, and Ethiopia. What does this now mean for BMW's offering?
Well, I think that historically, when I grew up, BMW was meant for higher LSM markets. But, very recently we've seen them manufacturing, iterations of BMWs that are meant, for the lower LSM, basically trying to compete in the entry level, of the automobile market. And the fact that they are targeting some African countries, it shows that basically, there is good prospects, of growth in middle class in these countries. Because remember that in any country, the middle class are the key engine of the economy. It's not the super rich. I mean, if you give a billionaire R1 million, he's not going to spend it, and promote, velocity of money in the economy. Rather, maybe he will just buy, a share or maybe shares of his own company. So there's no multiplier in the economy. So if you're investing in the middle class, then really, you promoting consumerism. So the fact that BMW has, identified this country shows that, there is a reason to believe that some people in those countries are being promoted from low income to the ranks of the middle class.
Yeah, absolutely. Confidence levels across the manufacturing sector dropped 14 points to 29 in the second quarter. That's according to the latest Absa manufacturing survey. Talk us through these findings.
Well, I think that it's not surprising because in the first quarter of this year, manufacturing was very strong. Last year I think it was commodities commodities and mining that was very strong. And first quarter of this year we saw manufacturing spiking up close to about 5%. But since then it has relapsed, for a number of reasons. There were floods, in certain parts of the country, especially in KZN. And then there was also some lingering labor strike, that affected the steel sector. And then since 2008, you'll remember that this country basically is battling with load shedding. So obviously, some producers, have to ration the electricity supply, and this means that capacity utilization is getting affected, which will have knock-on effect on manufacturing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now. Neo Kgantsi, Portfolio Manager at Absa, giving us a sense of the very latest in the world of business. Thank you for your time.